What's up, fellas? In the second video of the day today, I want to talk about a guy that I just find continually incredibly intriguing as a player, as a possible trade target, and it's Marvin Bagley. Earlier today, we talked about Blake Griffin and his buyout, if you guys missed that. But in this one, we're going to talk about another front court player, but in a completely different scenario. A young guy that I think has an incredible amount of talent that hasn't found his footing in Sacramento, could possibly be on the move in Marvin Bagley. We're going to talk about possible teams for him. We're just going to talk about the context of the situation as a whole and where his career is going to be going here moving forward. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every single day on this channel, so it's a great place for consistent NBA content, the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. My name is Tucker, by the way. What's up if you guys are new here? You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well if you enjoy them, and you can check me out at various socials in a Linktree link down in the description below. With those things said, let's go ahead and talk about Marvin Bagley. So in terms of context here, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but from the time that Marvin Bagley came out in the draft, I never thought that he should have gone ahead of Luka, but I thought from an athleticism standpoint, from a potential standpoint, Marvin Bagley could be a really, really good player. I mean, he's got all the size in the world. He's a great athlete. He's fluid. He's got great length. And as long as he developed the skills necessary to be a really good front court player in the league, he was going to be a really good player. And the things that I thought could hold him back was potentially positional fit. He really struggled to defend at the college level. Was one of the main reasons that Duke had to go to a zone while he was in college in that 1 year at Duke, because he just couldn't defend. And ultimately, I felt like his future was as a really, really skilled five-man that could kind of figure out a way to be good enough in ball screens and defending at the rim in order to play that position. Ultimately, when he got to Sacramento, they decided that it was better to play him at the 4 spot, and I think there's been a lack of direction in terms of his development and kind of really just saying, this is the kind of NBA player you're going to be, and I think ultimately that has held him back. And to this point, he's just not a winning player. He's not a great floor spacer, and he's not a guy you're like revolving your offense around right now. Tyrese Haliburton, De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, those guys are kind of, the main focal points here in Sacramento. And when that's the case, Marvin Bagley's going to have to make some off-ball shots. He's going to have to be able to work around other players, and he just has not figured out a way to do that. And defensively, he's still pretty much a disaster. So all those things considered, I still think he's really interesting. But with the situation in the context of what's going on there in Sacramento, where I don't think any player should be off limits there, except for De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton, I do think that Marvin Bagley is a potential tradable asset, a potential trade target for this season. And there's a lot of teams that I would like to take a look at this scenario amongst, Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield and Bielitsa, other guys on the roster. I would be calling about Marvin Bagley if I was another team right now. Let's talk about some other teams that could potentially be involved here. I've talked about a potential John Collins for Marvin Bagley swap in the past. I think that makes a lot of sense for both teams. Atlanta is having issues with John Collins because seems like the one guy that is pushing back on the Trae Young needs to be the guy that has the ball in his hands all the time thing in Atlanta. And I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but I think that Atlanta could be more motivated to potentially move him because of that, context between him and Trae Young and the fact that he needs to be paid this offseason. And for Sacramento, John Collins represents a significant upgrade in the current tense over someone like Marvin Bagley. Helps them a lot, fits really well into their lineup. And Atlanta gets a player in Bagley with a ton of potential that they don't have to pay for another 2 years and doesn't have the same issue with Trae Young that John Collins does. So if you did some kind of Collins for Bagley swap and then Sacramento giving up additional value, obviously because John Collins is a significantly better player, I could see that working out really well from a roster perspective. Unfortunately, Atlanta's in a situation right now from a front office perspective where they can't really afford to take any steps backward. I think ultimately that would be a really good trade for them, but they need to win this season if they want to keep their job there in the front office. So ultimately, I don't know that that's a super realistic destination right now, but I think from a roster perspective, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a trade that I would like to see. Another situation that's kind of similar to that is if Chicago wanted to take a look at maybe trading away Lauri Markkanen in exchange for Bagley and some value. It's a similar situation to the Collins thing. Maybe Chicago likes Markkanen, but they're not super excited about paying him. He represents a significant upgrade there in Sacramento, can space the floor around De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Haliburton, and Buddy Hield. And it's a similar thing to the Collins thing without the whole disgruntled, personalities between Trae Young and John Collins. That doesn't exist there with Markkanen in Chicago. It'd be more about the fact that he is a free agent, a restricted free agent this upcoming offseason. And then a couple of other teams that I don't really have a trade for, but I would just, if I could choose, I would really love to see Marvin Bagley in these destinations. The first would be New Orleans. The idea of a Marvin Bagley, Zion Williamson front court is so intriguing to me. And they certainly have assets. If they really wanted to go out and get Marvin Bagley, they could send really anything they wanted to Sacramento. Sacramento would be interested in kind of taking draft picks or taking whatever in exchange for Bagley, or even a veteran player. And I just can't get that idea out of my head of the crazy athleticism and potential of a Zion, Marvin Bagley front court. You have Brandon Ingram out there. And yeah, you might give up 130 points a game for a while before, these guys kind of figure out how to play defensively. But when you're thinking about New Orleans as one of those like young teams that has all these interesting young players and assets and stuff, I would just love to add Marvin Bagley to that, or to a situation like Oklahoma City as well. If I was a team like that knows that you're probably not going to be great this year, I would try and buy low on Marvin Bagley, see if Sacramento is willing to give him up just to kind of give him a fresh start, because I think ultimately there is a coach in the league somewhere that is going to be able to get out of Marvin Bagley what he should be doing. And I would be really interested, if I was any other team in the league, if I could be that team that really unlocks Marvin Bagley. The other one that's probably the most interesting on the entire list for me personally would be Minnesota. I think Minnesota is a team that needs an injection of something new. They've brought in new players. Of course, they brought in Anthony Edwards and things like that, but they have a significant hole at the 4 spot. And if you're someone that believes that Marvin Bagley can be a really good 4, that fit alongside Karl-Anthony Towns is so interesting, because Towns makes everything easy for whoever his front court mate is, because you're going to have a ton of space because of his ability to space the floor. So you can be an inside player, you can be an outside player, it doesn't matter. Karl-Anthony Towns can play anywhere on the basketball court, which allows a ton of flexibility for Marvin Bagley to come in and just play the way he wants to play. He doesn't necessarily have to be a floor spacer, because they already have that in Towns in the front court. I think that's one of the issues right now in Sacramento, is he kind of has to be that if he's on the floor, or he has to play the 5, and then at that point their lineup isn't really all that great. So throwing him in there in Minnesota alongside Anthony Edwards, alongside D'Angelo Russell, alongside Karl-Anthony Towns, they've got Malik Beasley, they've got really interesting players there in Minnesota, and Bagley would be another guy that would just kind of raise the ceiling for that group. But ultimately, I think my dream scenario for Marvin Bagley would be for him to end up somewhere like San Antonio, somewhere like Miami, a team that, if it's ever going to happen for him, if he's ever going to develop, if he's ever going to figure it out, if he's ever going to be a really good 4 or 5 in the NBA, it's going to be at one of those two teams. One of those two teams is going to be able to bring out of Marvin Bagley what they need to in order to make him a really good NBA player. And those would be my 2 dream scenarios, would be Marvin Bagley in San Antonio in exchange for whatever. If you want to make it a DeMar DeRozan trade, fine. DeMar DeRozan in exchange for Marvin Bagley and, salary filler and, a pick or something. However you want to make that work. You bring in DeMar DeRozan into a situation in Sacramento where he can be a veteran leader. He can help them push towards the playoffs. And San Antonio works more towards the future, and again, potentially gets a hugely, valuable, high potential player moving forward. And then Miami is a similar situation where, they've got Bam, they've got Precious, but, I don't think that they would be able to pass up the potential of someone like Bagley. Of course, the fit isn't fantastic, but for me personally, it's just a selfish thing where, I want to see that guy succeed. And I think if it's going to happen, it would happen in somewhere like Miami or like San Antonio. So ultimately, those are some of the things to take a look at. I don't know how likely it is that Bagley ends up getting moved, but I just want to see it. And I could be completely wrong. Marvin Bagley might be out of the league in 3 years. I think that's a realistic possibility. But I love the potential of this guy, and I've really enjoyed him as a player, even going back to his days in college. I never thought he should have gone ahead of Luka, but I always thought that from an athleticism standpoint and from a fluidity standpoint, there was no more interesting prospect in that class, I think, than Bagley, and it just hasn't happened. And I think that to this point, it's okay to kind of blame Sacramento for that just by default, because it's Sacramento. They have a history of kind of screwing up, guys that they draft, and I think it's just worth seeing him in a different spot. I don't think it's going to necessarily get better in Sacramento. I think they're committed to trying to make it work, to try and justify taking him over Luka, but the longer he stays in Sacramento, I think the less and less likely it becomes that he ends up becoming a really good player. So somewhere else would be interesting. Any team in the league right now that's looking to add a potential high potential guy should be looking at Bagley, whether that's Boston, whether that's Miami, San Antonio, Chicago, Atlanta, New Orleans, Minnesota, name a team. Let me know down in the comment section below if you would be interested in potentially trading for Bagley, or if you're a Kings fan and you're like, no, we can't lose Marvin Bagley. This is still a guy I really believe in. I'm interested to see y'all's opinions in the comment section down below. But with those things said, that's going to be the end of the second video of the day, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. As I said, I upload twice a day, every single day, so it's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube if that's something you're interested in. Like the video, check out the socials in the link tree down in the description below. And yeah, hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.